I told you the world is run by psychopaths. Look at this. This right here is the back of a Texas ID card. On the back of this Texas ID card, along the bottom there, you see this strange looking pattern. Inside that strange looking pattern contains the owner of the ID card, information, personal information, address, previous address, age, date of birth, all that personal information, along with this barcode on the top. It also contains a link to your criminal history. Biometrics are beginning to be the leader in global identification, which is part of the global sustainability development program in Agenda 2030. If you don't believe me, watch this. This is an ID card right here. On the very, very bottom, you're going to look right here. See this real long number? That real long number that starts with a DD and has several digits behind it. What that is a global jacket number that connects you to a mega database that contains all your personal information that can be accessed worldwide by any intelligence agency or any governmental agency. They are beginning to implement this identification program through biometrics in order to identify everyone in the world biometrically through one system and compile all the data into a mega database. And why? For global sustainable development implemented in this Agenda 2030 program. And it's not really for global sustainable development. It is for tracking enhanced surveillance, rationing, identification, and all these things that are connected to it. Let me break this down for you real quick. It's a plan to remove your freedoms. It's a plan to globally identify you. It is a plan to restrict your movement without it. It is a plan to restrict your monetary purchases without it. It is a plan to track your every dollar spent. It is a plan to eventually ration and control the amount of money you spend. And it is also a plan to rob you blind. Let me break it down real quick. We are quickly moving to a cashless society. Global identification will soon be the standard. In this biometric age, we have already begun to use biometrics on a regular basis, and it gets implemented in stages. Time clocks at work have handprints, thumbprints. DMV requires you to give a fingerprint in order to get your ID. Smartphones are introducing and implementing apps where you can identify yourself with either a facial scan or a fingerprint scan. Airport customs passage can sometimes be cleared with a retinal scan. You must be able to do these certain things with biometrics in order to fly, which is giving an incredible amount of control to the TSA. State and local agencies are beginning to implement this program, which is the Real ID Act passed in 2005. And there's a quick timeline I want to break down for you real quick. This is from the Homeland Security website, the requirement for the Real ID, okay? States must meet requirements, and it prohibits federal agencies. This Real ID Act prohibits federal agencies from accepting for official purposes licenses and IDs from states that do not meet these standards. Okay, as of last year, there were several states that already met the standards, and these states that did meet the standards are liberal Democrat states. But we're not going to get into politics with this. What this is a globalist plan. Okay, now, it's going to eventually affect the way that you travel, the way that you drive, the way that you fly and travel by train, or even maybe local public transportation systems in the very near future. Now, here's an air travel timeline for the implementation of this Real ID Act. In 2016, the TSA implemented a notification program and a training program to all their agents. If you noticed in the airports, they were beginning to put up notifications about this. On January 22, 2018, people with ID from a state that is non-compliant with the Real ID Act will need to show alternative ID that is an acceptable form of ID for the federal agents in order to domestically travel. In other words, on January 22, 2018, next year, 7 months from now, if you want to travel from Houston to Shreveport, Louisiana, or to Palm Springs, Florida, and you want to fly, you will have to have a Real ID, which is this enhanced security ID, which contains your biometrics in order to domestically travel, or another acceptable form of ID. And they say that for official purposes, for governmental official purposes. Now, we all know that anytime a government official clocks in and starts their shift, they are automatically working under official purposes. And anytime they speak to or ask questions from a private citizen, they are conducting an investigation for official purposes, right? Now, if you present this ID, it's not acceptable. They will be conducting an investigation for official purposes to positively identify you, and you will need to provide an acceptable form of ID. Now, what will that be? Maybe a passport. A passport contains this chip inside the passport, which could be considered an acceptable form of ID, because that's going to be the only way they can scan it. You may have to provide, in addition to that, a handprint retinal scan or something of that nature. They are already implementing facial recognition technology everywhere in the inner cities with these security cameras posted everywhere. All right. Now, on October 1st, 2020, following me? Just before the 2020 election, presidential election, on October 1st, 2020, every air traveler will be required to have a Real ID compliant for domestic travel or another form of acceptable ID. So, you'll be required to have this enhanced identification that contains your biometrics or another acceptable form of ID, which will contain your biometrics. And what I mean is, like, you're going to have your retinal scan, your personal information on that, your fingerprint. It is quickly moving towards mapping the entire planet's DNA as an acceptable form of identification. Like I said, this gets implemented in stages. Now, how are the banks involved in all this? HSBC, NatWest, Barclays, Adam Bank, all of these banks in the UK are using your body as a password, and 37% of millennials in the UK believe that a password is obsolete and not necessary. So, in order to make it more speedy and efficient, they are implementing a portion of your body as identification purposes. In other words, they have provided you with mobile banking on your phone with the use of a thumbprint or facial recognition technology to positively identify you. Now, don't think for a minute that when they say they're going to give you the opportunity to use a facial recognition technology to positively identify you, that they are not scanning your retina and mapping it, because the retina is a unique part of the body. And this is a global plan to positively identify every human on Earth for control. Now, think about it. They're already restricting your money without this biometric scan. They're going to connect it to air travel, which will become the standard for all travel when it is fully implemented in the air travel business, and the general public just begins to believe that it's the norm. Well, then people like Greyhound bus, Amtrak, city buses will say, okay, this is the standard for transportation, then we're going to implement this too. You must have this identification. Now, all your money can be connected to this identification. So we're going to start doing away with these bank cards and place everything on your identification card. You understand where this is going? Now, countries that have implemented these type of programs, UN-connected countries, include Argentina, Belgium, Colombia, Germany, Italy, Peru, Spain, Somalia, France, UK, and several other nations. What they have begun to do is give these people with these smart enhanced IDs and assign them a global number. Remember in the beginning of the video, this global number on the bottom of your ID? That is a global number. What they've done is assigned all these people a global number, entered it into a massive database, and so that you can be tracked anywhere and everywhere you go. If we implement this program where you can't travel without this domestically, then that means truck drivers who carry freight will eventually have to be chipped and have ID that is chipped in order to pass through these checkpoint weigh stations. And if an individual person must be able to have this type of ID for border crossings, then that would mean they could and probably will implement this program for border crossings between states. So individual travelers passing from Texas to Oklahoma or Louisiana or New Mexico may have to pass through these checkpoints for security purposes, of course, in order to positively identify themselves before traveling any further. So if you can see that this is a restriction on your travel, a connection to your money, a restriction on your food. Now, they are implementing programs where these people that receive welfare and SNAP recipients, I would assume that in the very near future, when this globally connected smart ID, enhanced ID program is fully implemented in the United States and becomes the standard and a requirement, that all this information will be connected to your social security number. It'll be connected to your criminal history. It'll be connected to your financial history. It'll be connected to your personal information, including your address, phone numbers, email addresses, and all that. It'll be connected to your social media. It will be connected to your governmental programs that you participate in. So all this gives them, the globalists, the opportunity to document, track, ration, cut off, begin to take complete and total control over every aspect of your life in the name of, we're going to fool you and say that we need to do this because terrorist attacks are beginning the norm. We can't track money because people hack your accounts. A cashless society is more speedy and efficient. Passwords are obsolete. We need a single type of program, a single ID, a continuity in the ID process in order to avoid confusion, and we need to have information sharing for public security. All these things is what they're going to tell you and the reasons why they're doing it. And some of them may be legitimate, but in the end, it all comes down to control. It all comes down to the globalist plan that falls into what they say sustainable development, which is really code word for we want to control every aspect of your life, remove your freedoms, remove your choice, and you will no longer be in control of your assets, your travel, and everything that goes along with it. This plan is disguised as something that will benefit America and the rest of the world, and is being implemented across the globe and will be a required, acceptable form of identification in every state in America by October 1st, 2020. And if you have not renewed your ID by then, if you have not obtained an identification by then, you will be considered unidentifiable, and most likely the laws will be in effect where you could be arrested. And think about it. Remember when you didn't have your ID, you got arrested or pulled over, and the cops said, you got your ID? You can't produce ID. Remember when the police said, well, we're just going to have to take you down and fingerprint you so we can identify you? Well, how about when I say in the very near future, these cops are going to say, it is the law and you are required to have this enhanced identification. You don't have it, so you're going to have to go to court and face the judge and explain to him why you don't have it. We're going to lock you up. Are you seeing how this comes into play here? Prison Planet. Think about it. They are destroying your freedoms. The world is run by psychopaths. The global identification system is a plan to take control of every aspect of your life. So that's my report on this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you stuck with me throughout the entire report. And if you did, please consider my PayPal and my Patreon in the bottom, in the link in the description below. Become a supporter of Johnny Jet Rod, or if you would like to make a one-time donation, you can connect with me on PayPal and do so that way. So I just want to say thank you, America. Thank you to all my supporters and my viewers. Continue to subscribe, share my reports, and spread this globally so that we can identify the globalist plan and spread truth, freedom, in the American way. My name is Johnny Jet Rod. Thank you, America.